Squadron Commander. Thanks for coming here this morning. How many of you are excited to learn about our new Enlisted Evaluation System? All right. I know a lot has changed and has been changing. I equate this to building the plane as we're flying it. Whereas I like to say to my team, we're in the middle of a soccer game and they're changing the rules to rugby, and we're in the middle of the game and they're changing the rules. Oh, and by the way, with the changes to VPC that they pushed down on us, you know, they're changing the turf too. So we're going from natural task to turf in the middle of the game. We're changing the rules. But we're doing the best that we can to ensure you have the information you need to make sure every airman has the same opportunity to be successful and has a fair rating during the process. So with that said, our team has gone down to AFPC. They've got the information directly from the source. Changes have been coming. We've been staying up to date with those changes, and we're finally ready to roll this information out to you so that you can execute in time for the Tech Sergeant EPR process. So with that said, I will turn it over to Tech Sergeant Jolly, but I do want to make two public service announcements. One, we will be having a question and answer session following the briefing, so write down your questions, make sure you capture them as you think of them, and then ask them at the end of the briefing. And also, this is being recorded so that for those who can't be either at this one or the other one that's going to be at 1400 in the same location, if they can't make it, we'll have it posted up on the web and folks can watch this at their desk. So hold your questions. Know it's going to be recorded. Sergeant Jolly, over to you.
Good afternoon. Make sure this is working. I'm Sergeant Jolly. I'm the NCOIC of our Force Management Office here at JBER. Our office handles all the EPRs and OPRs for the base. We have a great team of NCOs and airmen who are all well versed in this program, but our goal is to make sure you guys are well versed in the program as well. So without further ado, these are the things we'll be going over today. We're going to cover references, timelines. A big one is the terms. A lot of phrasing has changed. There's a lot of new keywords that we're using that are not familiar in our circles for the enlisted folks. We're also going to talk about the eligibility listings as well as the procedures for large and small units, and then we'll actually cover the 910 itself and how it should be filled out. In here, these are the references we're using. So we have IC3, which was released on 30 November, and the newest version of the 910, which is version 3, which version 3 kind of worked out some of the kinks that we had with signing. So please make sure that you guys are utilizing that one to make your job easier. Okay, so here are the milestones that we have. These are the time frames that we're looking at for this new force distribution process. Right now, we're on the Tech Sergeant SCOD, and this is what we're working on. As you can see, some of the dates have already passed, and we're going through those. We have received most of the final MELs, master eligibility listings from AFPC, and they're going out to the unit commanders right now. One thing to note is that when it's all said and done and all signatures, and we'll go over the process, that they're due back to our office, completed and signed through everybody by 29 Jan for Tech Sergeants. This right here, I don't expect y'all to be able to read it from your seats, but this is the WAPS promotion to eligibility testing chart. With this, it is available on the MyPERS website. If you just type in the WAPS eligibility, you can pull up this sheet, and it'll give you a clear date frame on who should and shouldn't be considered for promotion recommendations. Okay, so terms, new words that we have using. One is accounting dates. All of you have probably heard of this already. The accounting date is 120 days prior to the static closeout date for each cycle. So for Tech Sergeants, it's 3 August was the accounting date, and wherever you are physically assigned, whatever unit you were assigned to as of 3 August is who will be writing your Tech Sergeant report. Then we have aggregation. And aggregation is where small unit commanders, and we'll discuss which are small and large in a minute, but those are when the small unit commanders determine who they're going to send up to the wing panel to receive promotion recommendations. Then we also have force distributors. For most of you in this room in the normal squadron construct, that's going to be your squadron commander. As you can see up there, group staff their FD is the group commander. And then wing staff and wing staff agencies are the vice wing commander. Okay, so for those of you who have looked at the new 910, there's a block on there that says FDID, and a lot of people are like, what is that? I don't understand what that is. It should be on the EPR shell that's with that in that VPC site. The FDID is a 9-digit code that identifies the one person that will provide the promotion recommendation for your unit. Then we've also got Master Eligibility Listing, or MEL, which I covered a minute ago. This is just a listing from AFPC saying these are who were assigned to your squadron and this is how many allocations you can give out. And we'll go over those numbers in a minute as well. Then we have large units. Large units are any units consisting of 11 or more time and grade, time and service eligible members. Now, that being said, even if someone has a UIF, even if they've had an adverse action, they can still be time and grade, time and service eligible and count towards the number of allocations your unit receives. Then we also have small units, which are 10 or less time and grade, time and service airmen, and those folks will be aggregated up to a senior rater panel where they'll determine the promotion recommendations. Okay, so one of the big changes on the new EPR is fitness. For those of you who've looked at it, you'll notice there's no longer a fitness block that says pass, fail, or exempt. Now it's included in the language in the standards and conduct. So what that means is that we're no longer just automatically, boom, you have a referral EPR because you have a failure. They've separated failed fitness tests from the evaluations, and now they're actually included. If you have a failed fitness test on the PCOD date, you will be ineligible for promotion consideration. But that is handled on the promotion side. It's not designated in the evaluation. So as evaluators and ratees, what does that mean to you? It means that the unit commander has the decision to decide whether or not that report's going to be a referral based on a routine or significant failure to adhere to the standards. And that's any standard, not just fitness. The other new block we have, for those of you who didn't deal with the senior NCO reports, is non-rated days. This is a new area. With non-rated days, it's not your folks went on leave for 30 days or they're out on a deployment. This is actual specific conditions, and each condition has a different approval authority. Some of the examples of it are confinement or sexual assault victims, as well as wounded warriors. Those folks are the ones that are going to have approvals or disapprovals from the source on whether or not they're going to be non-rated. Now, if you have anybody or you're someone that was not rated for a period of time, let's say they can't go, you as an evaluator cannot say, hey, this member was never at work because they were out because they were sick. It's a non-rated period, so you can't comment on anything that happened during those non-rated days unless the ratee asks. So say you did have someone that was ill or that was out for whatever reason and they completed their CCAF. If the ratee wants you to, you can include that on their report, even if it occurred during their non-rated days. Okay? With that, if the entire rating period was non-rated, just for an example, let's say someone was in confinement for all 365 days, there's a mandatory statement that has to be in that report that says the member was not rated for the entire period, and then there will be no other comments in that report. Okay, so the big thing, what everyone wants to know, WAPS points. So that is all driven directly from the promotion recommendation from your commander. This is not the evaluator's assessment. So on the front side of the form, the evaluator is going to make their comments on how you performed in your daily tasks and how well you met standards, but that's not going to count for those points. Your points come directly from the commander's or the panel's promotion recommendation. So if you look down here, we have the different percentages. So for staff sergeants and tech sergeants, only 10% of eligibles are going to receive a must promote promotion recommendation, and only 5% will receive a promote now. When we get down to senior airmen, 15% will receive a must promote, and then an additional 5% will receive the promote now. Now that's a number that they can give out. They do not have to give out all of those allocations. If they don't feel that they have enough people in their unit for the allocations deserving of those ratings, then they can just let them fall off, okay? So there is no restriction on promote ratings, on not ready nows or do not promotes. One big thing for you all to note here is only 15% of staff sergeants and tech sergeants are going to get the top 2 ratings. That means there's still 85% of folks, which probably a good 75 to 80% are still going to be a promote. The Air Force is not changing their promotion rates. They're still going to have whatever they need for that year to fill their quotas in the ranks is who's going to get promoted. So there's a lot of people that are going to have a promote recommendation that will get promoted. So it's really up to you guys to make sure that you study and you have those points behind you when you have that promote rating. You see right here, I've had some questions over the last few weeks about how is it fair with WAP's promotion. Say you're only going to look at my top EPR because I've only been eligible for 1 year, and next year so-and-so is going to have 2 EPRs. Well, there's a percentage rating, and those promotion recommendations, when you have that first one, so say it's your very first report and you get a promote now, you're going to have 250 WAPS points. Next year, let's say that the following year you got a promote. So now we're going to take a percentage, and the max number of points anyone can receive is 250 points. Okay? And this is available on the My PERS page if you guys want to go out, and it gives details on how to calculate the math. These are the different promotion recommendations we have. So we have Promote Now, which is your top of the top 5%. Then we have a Must Promote, which are really designated for your outstanding performers that consistently go above and beyond. Then we have Promote, which is performs with the majority of airmen and at a level consummate with their peers. So just that's your folks that come to work, they do their job, they do a good job, and that's what they get credit for. Then we have Not Ready Now, and this is when you're not considered ready for promotion based on you just might need a little bit more work in 1 or 2 areas, or there's some things that need to be, there's a few things that might need to just be groomed in order for you to be able to be ready for that next rank. Then we have Do Not Promote. If a unit commander is going to give a Do Not Promote rating, that EPR had to have been referred somewhere on the top of the form. So if the report had not been referred and the commander's going to give a Do Not Promote rating, he would have to non-concur with the previous raters and refer that report. Okay, so that's the actual FD's responsibilities. However, as an evaluator, these are the things that you're going to be rating a member on. You're looking at performance and primary duties and training requirements, followership and leadership, whole airman concept, and overall performance assessment. Now that being said, if the member has a referral in the top 2 blocks, the whole airman concept block will be completely blocked in the form and you won't be able to fill anything in that area. The possible markings for each of them are not rated, met some but not all expectations, met all expectations, exceeded some but not all expectations, and exceed most, if not all, expectations. Then with the additional rater, on the old form, the rater had their block, they're going to mark a 1 through 5, and then the additional rater marks a 1 through 5. On the new form, the additional rater is only going to concur or non-concur with the supervisor's rating. They're not going to go in and have to put in their own block in there. Okay, so the not rated days, we talked about those. Those are very unique circumstances and they have different approval authorities. We do have references on these slides and they will be going to your CSS. If you have questions on them, you can go back to the AFI and read the remainder of the paragraphs. The next one is met some but not all expectations. Anyone that has this rating, it is a referral. So then the report needs to go ahead and go through that referral process if they're marked on that. Then we have met all expectations, exceeded some but not all, which is when they're performing above, and then exceed most if not all, which is your top of the line highest level. And just to recap on that real quick, one thing to note on between the promotion recommendations and the evaluator's assessment is there is no limitations on the evaluator's assessment. So if a member receives a promote from the commander, they could have still had everything to the right from the evaluator. Okay, they don't match. So you're not going to have to be an old school 3 because you have a promote. The master eligibility listing. So these came out about a month ago. All your unit commanders got them, and they validated which members were supposed to be on there based on the accounting date. They sent all their discrepancies to the MPS, and we worked with AFPC to get those corrected. As we're going through the Tech Sergeant SCOD, very shortly thereafter we'll receive the Staff Sergeant MELs, and we'll be going through that same process. AFPC is creating all the VPC sites based on SCOD. They're supposed to be created in a perfect scenario 120 days prior to the SCOD. As of right now, with this year's process and us getting all the information behind, the Tech Sergeant VPC sites have been created and are out there for the CSSs to distribute. Also, once the CSSs receive those sites, they're supposed to assign the sites to the appropriate rater. If you receive a VPC site and you are not that member's rater, please contact your CSS and have them correct it. We had some folks that the member was being assigned as the rater, and they shouldn't have that role, because when there's corrections to be made, it goes back to the member as opposed to the supervisor. Also, raters will type up that draft DPR and they'll process it through their normal unit, going through and doing the pre-review. And then before the force distributor, if you're a large unit, or the panel, if you're a small unit, makes any recommendations, the report has to have already been signed by the rater and the additional rater. After that unit commander or the panel makes a decision, you can't go back and change the ratings. Okay, so if the panel or the unit, if the panel decides, hey, they're a promote, you can't go back and be like, oh, well, now I'm not going to give them a old school 5. You actually you keep your rating as it stands, and then they make their promotion recommendation based on the information they're allowed to use. The final MELs, most of them have been released, and we are getting those out to your units right now, and that is where your unit commander will identify the promotion recommendation for those of you with large units, or they will identify who they are going to aggregate up to the panel for small units. Now, the force distributors, again, they're not required to use all the allocations. So if they have 5 allocations and they only think 3 people are worthy, the other 2 are going to fall off. They don't roll over. They don't roll to another unit. They just will be off the chart for that year. This is the flow chart for the large unit MELs. So large units will receive that final MEL. They'll identify what promotion recommendation they're going to give and annotate the MEL. They're going to verify that they have not exceeded those allocations and sign the EPRs. Then your unit is going to forward those to the MPS for validation. Once we make sure the allocations are good, we're going to send it back, and then you'll have your ratee sign the report for final. So large unit responsibilities, and if you see this says large unit FD responsibilities, and most of you in here aren't a force distributor, so you're saying, why do I need to know the large unit FD responsibilities? It's because your airmen are going to ask, and your NCOs are going to ask, how does this process work? The first point of that is that large unit FDs are required to adhere to all the instructions in AFI 36-2406, as well as any additional instructions provided from the senior rater. They'll go ahead and do that annotation just as we discussed from the flow chart, sign it, and the one big note on here is that they can't make any selections any earlier than 1 calendar day following the SCOD. Okay. So what information are they going to use? They are only, when they're making their final promotion recommendation, what they're allowed to use is up to the last 3 EPRs in the current grade. So that's the EPR that they're currently writing, the one, and then the 2 prior to that, as long as they're in the grade or they were a select. So if you were a tech select a year ago and then you're a tech sergeant, then you'll have 2 reports. They're also going to show each eligible's career brief. This is a unique product that is coming out just for promotion recommendations. We have not seen what the final ones look like, but I can tell you what's not on them. Advanced degrees and PME is not on the career briefs, so those will not be considered for promotion recommendations. The other option is that each force distributor can allow a push note from lower level leadership. And this is where the flight commander can say, hey, this is my number 1, 2, and 3 guy, as they're sending them up to the unit commander to make a recommendation. But they're not authorized to use any additional information from awards or 1206 packages. It can only be information in the EPRs being considered. Now, that being said, those are the only things they're going to review for the promotion recommendation process. But before they get to that point, they are required to do a mandatory quality force review, which this is being accomplished by the first sergeants most of the time. And they're going to go through the members' PIF and through their fitness scores to see if they routinely or significantly fail to adhere to the standards, or if they don't, if they're good. And so once that quality review is done, those portions are set aside, and then the commander will make their promotion recommendation if the quality force review was good. The last thing on here is that force distributors are required by the AFI to have a discussion with each member's supervisory chain prior to making a decision. So that way the commander knows how that flight and how that member's leadership is looking at that person, so everyone's on the same page. Okay, so we discussed the push note, and like I said, this is at the discretion of the unit commander. And again, it can only relay the nominee's relative standing among all airmen within that section. And then again, all the EPRs must be signed by the rater and additional rater and final before the unit commander makes his decision. He will sign after the promotion recommendation is complete. Any changes to the report, again, after the promotion recommendation is done, are not authorized unless there was some significant event that you found out that happened during the reporting period and was found out after the promotion recommendation was given. Okay, so this is for the small units. With the Tech Sergeant Scott, we're looking at a lot more small units. As we start getting to the Staff Sergeant and Senior Airmen, there's more eligible, so more and more units will become large units. With the small unit, there's 2 different paths. So for the folks that the commander knows that they're not going to aggregate up, they're not going to send them to the panel, they're either going to receive a promote rating or lower, they'll go through the same process as the large unit. Now the folks that are being aggregated, they're going to mark a box on their eligibility listing saying, hey, these are the folks I want to send up to the panel, and they'll send that back to the MPS so we can produce a listing for the senior rater. Those reports, again, have to be signed all the way through the additional rater before the panel meets, and then they'll have the panel meeting after that point. Small units have the same responsibilities as large units, except for the fact that they have to annotate the MEL of who they're sending to the panel as opposed to just awarding all their allocations. With that being said, the small units can only send up as many people as there are available allocations at the panel. The documents that the panel can review are the same as the large unit that they can review, but the difference is that if a push note is authorized, it will come from the unit commander and not from lower level leadership. And this is where the unit commander can rack and stack and say, this is my number 1, 2, or 3. But they still have to do the mandatory quality force review, and they should still have they are still required to have a discussion with the members' rating chain. The push note rules are the same, and the EPRs do have to be signed. And as you see up here, the results of those proceedings do not change the performance assessment by the rater or additional rater. I know I've said this a few times, but it's really important that you know that you don't have to go back and change your rating. You're not authorized to go back and change your rating based on what the recommendation provided. This right here is what the senior rater MEL looks like, and it's kind of like, well, I'm not a senior rater, I'm not going to look at it, why do I need this? The biggest reason is, as I wanted to show you all, the senior rater MEL only gives 3 promotion recommendation options. That's a promote now, a must promote, and a promote. So if you or one of your folks get aggregated to the panel, the lowest rating they're going to walk out of there with is a promote. They can't go back and say, oh no, this guy's going to be a not ready now. Unless, again, something occurred that we found out after the closeout. So here's the responsibilities of the panel. They're going to receive that senior rater MEL, and each senior rater, and we have 3 on this base, they have the decision of whether they want to hold a virtual or physical panel. They are allowed to provide those records to the panel members before the proceedings. And then we'll also provide a recorder for any physical proceedings in order to keep track of the scoring. Now, the members of the panel are limited to the senior rater, who is a voting member, any small unit commanders who sent people to the panel, the senior rater's command chief or senior enlisted leader. Those are in there, but they are non-voting members of the panel. That command chief and the recorder are the only 2 enlisted people authorized to be in the panel proceedings. The supporting documents for the panel are the same as they are for a large unit or for the small unit making the other recommendations. And the panel president is responsible for performing administrative duties and presenting the oath as well as being a voting member. And they're not authorized to delegate that unless they have a prolonged absence, which we're looking at a case-by-case basis, but typically 30 days or more. They're going to assign those appropriate promotion recommendations, and then there will be a panel report, which is how they will communicate those results to our office. So the scoring. Each senior rater gets to determine how they want to score the packages. The AFI gives 2 options. One of those options is a rack and stack, where each panel member is going to take, and they're going to say, this is my 1, 2, 3, 4. They're going to add up the numbers and find out who's at the top and who made the cutoff. Then there's a mini board MLR process, and this is where they're going to score each of the packages in a 6 to 10 point scoring increments. Their scoring is based only on those 3 documents we discussed before, and they are also authorized to allow advanced scoring. So if they're going to do a virtual panel and they want to send those records out ahead of time, the panel members can score them without any discussion, and as long as there's no major splits, that decision stands. If any member of the panel recognizes that there's a problem with someone's record, like, not that this would ever happen, or I think it would intentionally, but if there's something in somebody's EPR that they didn't do and another panel member knows that, they can bring that up to the command chief, the panel president, or the recorder. Commanders themselves are encouraged to have that discussion with the rating chain and come into the proceedings prepared to advocate for their members, to have that information and background, because they're expected to discuss their knowledge of the members' qualifications and skill sets. The panel members are also not authorized to discuss any third-party information. So my squadron commander couldn't walk in and say that the group commander said this person is the best on earth. It all has to come from first person. So just so you all know, that information is there. If they find out after the panel has met that someone did have a record-based issue and they had already received an allocation, the senior rater may downgrade or remove the promotion allocation, but it will not be given back. So the next person on the list isn't going to receive the allocation. This is the scoring for the MLR style scoring, which I know a couple of our senior raters are using. So now the biggest part and why you're here, what's your individual and supervisory responsibility? You're still writing a report just as you always have, but with the new promotion recommendation process, it is really important that you make sure that your records and your people's records are complete. The second bullet up there states, supplemental consideration will not be given if there was incorrect data on the career brief, if they were denied a nomination because of incorrect data, if the MEL was not returned or the member was overlooked, or if the nomination packages were not turned in or completed on time to meet proceedings. So, you know, we can't get those last-minute phone calls, hey, we forgot, we missed this guy. That's not going to work in these proceedings per the AFI. So for those of you who are getting ready to WAPS test, a lot of folks are looking at their SERFs. When your new EPR gets loaded, we'll use tech sergeants for an example. If you got the highest rating, your first character is going to be an L for exceeded most, if not all expectations, and your second character is going to be a C. So if you can tell, we're now on the FDRs. I don't believe anyone in this room is old enough to have an A in their SERF, but you'll still see the old ones that have the B on there. So the actual 910, most of you have already looked at it right now, but these are the blocks that the 910 covers. We have your identification data, your job description, primary duties, followership and leadership, the whole airman concept and the overall performance assessment, as well as the additional rater and unit commander blocks. And here is the new 910, for those of you who haven't seen it. Now right here, just so you all know, my office has a checklist that they do a QC of every EPR, OPR that goes through this base. This is the checklist that my folks have been provided to review the Air Force Form 910s. Your CSSs have a copy of this checklist, and I would recommend that as supervisors you make sure that your airmen or your NCO's reports are following these guidelines. That way you have less kickbacks in the end. On this one, you'll see item number 7 says FDID. Again, that can be found on the EPR shell report. The next big thing on here is number of days non-rated. If you see that's got a number in there, if they're authorized non-rated, you'll put that number. Most people are not going to have non-rated days. So if you do not have non-rated days and you closed out as a tech sergeant last year, your report dates will be 1 December 2014 to 30 November 2015. No matter how long your supervisor has been your supervisor, even if it's 1 day, even if it's 2 days, your period of supervision will be 365 days on your report. The reason for that is because you were supervised by someone for 365 days. Now, for those folks that are selects and they may have had a staff sergeant close out, then their number of days will be from the closeout of their last EPR until the closeout of this one. Then you'll also see down there the reason for report. CROs are still an option on the drop-down menu. However, they are not authorized for active duty. There are no more CROs for enlisted folks. So with that being said, you'll have to use one of the other blocks. Biennial is also in there, which is also a reserve only. Then we have your standard areas here of duty title, key duties, primary duties. On here, again, with the whole airman concept, if someone did not meet standards on the front side of the form, then that block will be whited out and you won't be able to fill anything in. On this one, so with the signature, say that you started digitally signing a report and you're routing it through VPC, and all of a sudden the additional rater retired and now they no longer have a CAC and they can't digitally sign the form. If it has to be wet signed, you have to pull that report out of VPC and all signatures have to be wet signatures. We can't have a combination of wet and digital signatures. Future roles. So a lot of you that dealt with the senior NCO ones have seen these. Future roles for the tech sergeants and below, it's really important to note that the future roles you're putting on your folks' reports can only be something that member is authorized to hold on the SCOD. So if that person is a tech sergeant EPR, and if you go back and reference the Little Brown Book, a tech sergeant cannot be a superintendent. So we can't put a future role of a superintendent. We could put a future role as an NCOIC of a work center, or maybe a PME instructor, depending on their qualifications, but it has to be something that they could physically hold on the SCOD based on their rank. Okay, so on this slide, acronyms. For those of you who got to do the senior NCO reports, the acronyms are a fun block. The thing is, the really important thing about the acronyms is making sure that they're formatted correctly and making sure that they're spelled out on your report. So here at JBER, we put Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, and then we put JBER in parentheses after it. After that, you can say JBER as many times as you want in that report, and you don't have to put it in the acronym list because you've already established what that acronym is somewhere in the report. Now, any other acronyms that are not on the approved acronyms list needs to be in that block on the EPR. When you put them in there, it's supposed to be the word spelled out, the acronym in parentheses, a comma, a space, and then the next one. And they're supposed to be in alphabetical order based on the actual spelled out words of the acronym. Okay? So we are looking at these and we're trying to make sure that everybody's report looks the same so that there's no discrepancies when they go up for their promotion boards. So that's what we're looking for, and that is in the AFI in their table. So this is what we covered so far. Next, we have a few questions and answers. They're common questions that was asked to AFPC that may have not been fully covered in the AFI, and we have their responses. And then once we finish those, we'll open up the floor to questions. The first one is, will referral EPRs hold up a unit's EPRs being sent to AFPC? Now, I may not have mentioned this before, but the new process with the EPRs is that the NPS has to receive every EPR from your unit before we can send them to AFPC. We're not just sending one at a time. So we're waiting on your entire squadron's package. Now the thing with this is if you have a referral, there's a spot on the master eligibility listing where a commander can mark referral. If he marks that, that referral report is not held to the same timeline as the rest of the reports. So you want to make sure if you know you're going to be writing a referral report for one of your folks that that block is marked so you're not held to the same timeliness. The next is, will advanced degrees be masked on the career brief? Yes, we do know that they will not be showing on the career brief and they will not be considered for the promotion recommendation process. For the large units, we get a lot of questions about this. Who can help the commander make a decision? Because these small units go up to a panel, they have a meeting, they all talk about it. In the large units, the commanders are allowed to have advisors, they're allowed to have discussions, but there's no panels allowed. So when it's time to make that final recommendation, it's up to the commander based on information he received, what he or she is going to mark on that report. The next is, can EFDPs or FDs review fitness history when making a promotion recommendation? Now, if you guys remember a few slides back, we said they have to review AFMs, right? But that's for the quality force review. When it comes to the actual promotion recommendation, now they're stepping aside and they can't go, well, this guy got a 76 and this guy got a 92, so we're going to give this guy a higher promotion recommendation. Okay? The next is, if a member becomes ineligible for promotion for a failed fitness status between the accounting date and the SCOD, does that affect the eligibility pool? No, because as I mentioned before, your eligibility pool is based only on time and grade, time and service eligibles, and not any pending adverse actions. The next one is, if a member fails their PT test after the SCOD, can that information be considered? No. We no longer have approval to request closeout date extensions to include fitness information. So whatever their fitness status is as of the SCOD is what will be considered. And the biggie, how will the old EPRs be scored in the WAP system? They will not be scored. All of your 5s, 4s, 3s, or 2s, or 1s that you got in the last so many years are not going to count towards promotion points. Now, for those of you who are tech sergeants going for master and you're going to be meeting the promotion board, The promotion board will be looking at 10 years worth of reports. So with this being said, AFPC got some feedback or some information. They pushed a message to us last week. Any person who received a 1 or a 2 referral report last year will not be eligible to receive anything higher than a promote rating this year. So we've already done a review, and we do not have any tech sergeants that fall in that category, but we'll be doing another review for the staff sergeants and senior airmen to make sure that the commanders are following the proper allocation processes.
I'm Lieutenant James Castleman, Chief of the Military Personnel Section. Captain Igo is my boss, the MPF commander. And Sergeant Jolly and Sergeant Smith work for us in the Force Management Section, and they're in charge of making sure all of your records are up to speed. So while you're taking a minute to digest the last 40 minutes of amazing information that Sergeant Jolly provided, think about what questions you have, and let me run up and let you ask the question to the microphone so that everyone can hear you. We're also jotting down any questions you have, because we're going to provide this video out there with your questions and our answers so that people that didn't make it here can get the benefit of your questions and our answers, because we want every airman here armed with this information. So now as you guys got some time to think, what do you have? We had like 8 to 10 questions this morning. They were all very good. No further questions? Sir?
Okay, I know there's questions out there, but I'm not going to force you guys to ask them. My spin on this is the Air Force has put a lot of effort into finding a way to recognize the top of the top performers, right? That 10 to 15% of performers, making sure that they get promoted, that they don't get lost in with the rest of our good performers. And so they came up with this process to identify them and ensure that they get promoted. But like Sergeant Jolly said, the large amount of folks are still going to get promoted with a promote, the center of the form on the promotion recommendation. And so keep that in mind when you see your EPRs. 85% of our airmen are going to get a promote rating, and that is going to be a good rating. I mean, 85%, that's 85 percentile. So keep that in mind. It's a cultural change, it's a shift we have to make. Now, is anyone else thought of a question?
All right, well, on behalf of 603rd Force Support Squadron, Military Personnel Section, thank you guys for coming. I hope this helps you arm yourself where what you need to do, and have a great day.